Bethesda is scared that the evil chuds, you and I, will not buy Elder Scrolls 6. And they are right to be scared, and they deserve it.
I had somebody point out the fact that if you go to Nexus mods and check the all-time most downloaded mods for Starfield, all of it is just fixes for Bethesda issues. There's obviously a community patch. Since Skyrim, it feels like every single game has to have that. Yeah, the first 3 pages are all the most downloaded stuff, are all fixes, overhauls of all of the mistakes that Bethesda made with Starfield.
Honestly, that seems completely on brand for Bethesda, because modding is just free bug fixing in their eyes.
Of things that didn't work, and I find that insane. So the conversation surrounding Starfield and Bethesda the last couple weeks has been as negative as it can be, and it's more so the worry that Bethesda
I did my part. Did you?
isn't learning from their mistakes and are only doubling down on a formula that it's dry and it is not working anymore. Shattered Space is a great example of that. It was supposed to be their Far Harbor moment in which they silenced critics, but they did the exact opposite. They have instilled fear in gaming audiences with the Elder Scrolls and Fallout and future entries of those franchises, because we just have no idea what to expect from this studio anymore, and it feels like their glory days are long.
I think we know what to expect from Bethesda. And I mean, that's literally the problem. We know what to expect.
Behind them. Shattered Space was extremely boring. It was supposed to be a traditional, handcrafted experience, again, not my words, Bethesda words, and it fell flat on its face. It was extremely boring content, it was buggy, and everything there just...
The craziest part, the Shattered Space content that was handcrafted might as well be AI generated because of how dull, boring, and unappealing it was.
It just did not work at all. And OpenCritic, we have all of the critic review scores, about 34 here. It has a top critic average of 61, with only 32% of critics recommending the experience. This is horrible. This is on Fallout 76 levels. And then even users, it's the same story. Only 30% of 2,800 reviews are positive, with the player base shrinking drastically the last couple of weeks, and it has been.
Nice. This is exactly what I expected. This is exactly what we all knew was gonna happen. There was no other way.
And since launch, as many people just do not feel Starfield. And it is worth mentioning that if you check the graph here, it's just been consistent negative reviews coming in for Shattered Space. So this isn't some giant hate campaign against Bethesda. People just do not like this content, and it's not clicking for them.
Yeah, this is the exact same thing that happened with Starfield on release. It released, a bunch of insane Bethesda fanboys upvoted in the first second it released because, well, Bethesda fanboys do have power, but it's a waning, a lacking power nowadays that is no longer as substantial as it previously was. And after the hype dies down, normal people who play Starfield just don't like it. People who have no idea of what Bethesda is, what Oblivion is, what any of these things are, normal people who just buy Starfield without any knowledge of what's happening or what this is, play it, they don't like it.
Now, it is worth mentioning in regards to criticism, Bethesda learning from these mistakes, they have given no indication that they are. This was earlier this year.
The opposite, they in fact have doubled down because Shattered Space is more of Starfield because they don't think there is anything wrong with Starfield. The same way that Fallout 76 has never actually improved anything that it already previously had. It just constantly adds more and more.
I think it was actually at the end of last year, in Bethesda are individually rebuting Starfield Steam reviews, defending the loading breaks and empty worlds. That's fucking insane, going to Steam and responding to critics and saying, no, you just don't get Starfield. We also have...
By the way, he's not lying. This is like a summary. He's not lying, by the way. That is actually exactly what's happening. But initially, Bethesda responded with pretty much ChatGPT prompt responses about the problems of Starfield, and their biggest copy paste response was, "Well, have you tried playing the game the right way? Not what you are doing currently, you idiot." And well, that made things worse, obviously.
This was recently, we talked extensively about this in the video, in which Bethesda design director Emil Pagliarulo defended Starfield, saying it's right next to Fallout and Elder Scrolls, it's part of the big three. It's not at all. and players nobody at all considers it on those levels or even close to it. And many people do not want to see a Starfield 2 after this. And then Bethesda's head honcho has echoed this sentiment as well. In May, he said, in regards to the criticism of the game, why it was so divisive, it was too different than you've seen it from us in past. And we just got
That's such a
a traditional Bethesda experience, and players completely rejected it. And the response that we got from the design director, it really tells you a lot about what's going on behind the scenes at Bethesda, and it feels like they're rejecting this criticism and not at all listening. They're like, la 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 la. That's pretty much what they're doing right now, putting their fingers in their ears as we're telling them, we're screaming at them to finally listen, finally overhaul all of their systems, and finally evolve the formula.
Look at that. He's using an apple. Not because he thinks it's good, just because he thinks it's expensive.
That just, it's ancient at this point, Todd and Emil. But even at launch, in regards to the bugs and performance issues with Starfield, we had Pete Hines. He spoke to gamesindustry.biz, and at the time he said, we embrace chaos, which, ha ha ha, the bugs, they're funny in Bethesda. That's not the case anymore.
No.
It was funny in the Skyrim and Fallout 4 days, but I think a lot of us after Fallout 76 grew to say it's unacceptable at this point.
Yeah, because the bugs were funny because sometimes you shot an arrow and for some reason the enemy just flew into outer space or something like that happened. That was funny. And that didn't happen every 3 seconds of gameplay. Since 76, bugs have no longer been funny.
Now, The Elder Scrolls 6, the only reason why we even got that announcement around 2018 was because of Fallout 76. Bethesda has made that quite clear in interviews. They said that the reason why they wanted people to know that The Elder Scrolls 6 was indeed going to be coming down the road, it was their commitment to saying, hey, we're still going to be doing single-player story-driven experiences in the future. Fallout 76 is one.
Also, did YouTube change the bar how much you have finished of the video from red to like this almost strangely pinkish thing, or am I just going insane?
One-off thing.
You know what, actually, don't answer. I don't want to know. But
it was announced way too early, and as this article mentions, Elder Scrolls 6 revealed early due to fans' pitchforks and torches, which Bethesda knew the feelings, the sentiment about an online Fallout game coming from Bethesda was going to be extremely negative, and that's exactly how it was felt. And
honestly, I didn't think that an online Fallout is necessarily bad. They just made it extremely bad and shit. That's what happened. I don't think a game online necessarily means it's bad. Live service does not necessarily equal bad instantaneously, even though live service does have a lot of more pitfalls than a classic single-player experience. But the fact that, oh, it's an online Fallout game, I didn't think that that's in itself it is bad.
In the weeks and months to follow, once that game actually did release, it just reinforced the perspective that Bethesda had no business doing an online multiplayer Fallout game, but obviously Fallout 76 has turned it around. It took years, but they did.
It hasn't turned shit around. It's still a depressing pile of garbage that honestly no one should ever play. It took them, what, 2 years, 3 years to implement NPCs?
Change perceptions about the game, but I think a lot of people,
and even then the NPCs are, well, this level of quality, so you bam, there you go.
Feel like The Elder Scrolls 6 should have been the attention years ago, and right now there is no end in sight on when this game will be releasing.
He gets shorter by every clip I see him.
All indication is that it could be a launch title for the next generation of Xbox consoles, which means 2028. That's insane. And based on how long these Bethesda experiences have been taking to develop, it probably is about 5 or so years. And then imagine a Fallout 5. That is probably like 2033. And Bethesda isn't exactly growing or changing any of their structure behind the scenes. So it very is likely we're going to be waiting a long time for The Elder Scrolls 6 and Fallout 5. But it is worth mentioning.
I honestly want Fallout 5 mod. I like Elder Scrolls as a thing, but you know, it's again, I say this all the time. Skyrim wasn't a great game in my opinion, but I still spent roughly 100 hours in it, okay? It wasn't the thing I liked the most. It wasn't a great game in my opinion, but I still could sink 100 hours in it. And the more advanced things happen, the more better game mechanics are made, the more outdated well, Elder Scrolls 6 is probably going to be when it releases, so I want Fallout 5 more, honestly, because Fallout can work in the same format that, it has been done. Given Emil is not the lead story developer and is hopefully strung by his pinkies on a tree.
That Bethesda just last year announced that the game was in early development and more news on it was still years away. So this just gives more indication that it probably is around 2028, probably right around the time that The Witcher 4 is arriving, which, oh boy, those comparisons that Bethesda is going to be seeing between the two games from CD Projekt, who smartened up, said
The Witcher 4 is going to be a disaster. It's going to be a shit show.
Red engine for them wasn't working and they wanted to go to Unreal. They made that change, which they've been working on it. And I think we're going to feel, I believe, a better experience for it. Now, if Bethesda continues with the creation engine, my God, imagine 5 years from now with how gaming will be, especially the standards that have already been set just in the last year or two with Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty, and also Baldur's Gate.
I did not know that that's a thing that could happen.
3. Bethesda, there's just no excuses when you look at the landscape, the environment, and how the industry is changing and evolving. And Bethesda is not evolving. I think that's the big problem here. But yeah, we do know that the Elder Scrolls 6 is likely taking place in Hammerfell or around that region. There's been a number of teases.
Yeah, because Mook diversity. Well, at least Hammerfell is a technical way to implement diversity. Dude, if it's in Hammerfell, they're gonna go just absolutely bonkers with. The main storyline is probably gonna be solving slavery or racism or something. I am willing to bet money on that.
Of it from Bethesda. We actually even saw a concept artist taking some inspiration from what you would assume would be individuals from that region. So yeah, this is going to be the direction that they're taking for the Elder Scrolls 6. Hammerfell, High Rock, that's probably the case. And there's been a number of teases. The Elder Scrolls 6 Easter egg in Starfield's trailer pretty much indicated that as well. And this is where we stand right now. Todd Howard just a couple of weeks ago said that Bethesda games are irresponsibly large. We cut very little from our games. That is a comment that I think he thought was supposed to be a good thing, but I think it puts into perspective the problem with Bethesda, and their standards is quantity over quality, which is
He unironically said, "Hey, our games are shit. Why? Because we don't give a crap. That's why." Unironically, that is what he said, and he's probably oblivious to it.
a truly blasphemous statement and just reinforces the perspective that Bethesda does not understand what players actually want from their games. Now, Todd Howard also said that he wanted the Elder Scrolls 6 to be the ultimate fantasy world simulator, and we already kind of saw that with Starfield, and it fell flat on its face because they went all in on AI, procedurally generated content, and that can't be the way that they go about the development of the Elder Scrolls 6. They can't be thinking about it as a 10-year, game. That was one of the big issues I have with Starfield, and I really hope that they double down on the handcrafted stuff. But even then, after Shattered Space, we just don't know what to expect. And recently we saw...
What's the point of handcrafted stuff after Shattered Space? It might as well all be AI generated.
An ex-Bethesda design director who left during the development of Starfield. He was at the studio for years. Bruce Nesmith, he talked about Bethesda possibly shifting to Unreal Engine, and he pretty much just said it's not going to happen and it wouldn't make sense for Bethesda, which I find a crazy perspective.
Yeah, dude, no one is happy with the engine that Bethesda is currently using. I think en masse, now this is going to probably get a lot of pushback because Bethesda fanboyism and whatnot, but modding is not something the majority of the player base use. My estimate is roughly maybe up to 5% of the Bethesda player base uses mods, unironically. And that's not simply enough people to justify not having mods over having an actual good game, okay? There's no way, okay? But there is the part that if they switch to Unreal Engine, they have no experience with that crap. They're gonna butcher it so hard.
Especially with the landscape of RPGs and what we're seeing other developers do that Bethesda can't do, like not having loading screens in their games. That seems like something that they can't escape in this ancient age of 2024. But Bruce Nesmith, just in this recent interview, He told Video Gamer, "We're arguing about the game engine, let's argue about the game. The game engine is not the point. The game engine is in service to the game itself. You and I could both identify 100 lousy games that use Unreal. Is it Unreal's fault? No, it's not Unreal's fault. The thing is, though, there is no developer at all using Gamebryo anymore. Nobody's upgrading past this engine because it's ancient technology. And as it's mentioned in this article, Gamebryo is a long defunct engine that Bethesda used as the basis for its in-house creation engine." And he continued, Nesmith, saying, "Gamebryo is no longer a business. It hasn't been for a while. I wonder why. But that engine has been constantly tweaked, updated, and refined to do exactly the kind of games that Bethesda makes. The Elder Scrolls, the Fallout, Starfield, it's perfectly tuned to that kind of game. And it's perfectly tuned to the game that people..."
I don't think there's a single person left who honestly and ironically is gonna say, yeah, the engine's fine. There's no one left who supports Bethesda using this outdated piece of shit engine.
Are tired of playing. People are tired and don't want to be playing Skyrim and Fallout 4 all over again. We have those games, people still enjoy them to this day, but we don't want future games to just be that. Those were games for their time. It's time for an actual evolution. In many ways, you still feel that in Fallout with the technical constraints and the design issues that people have, from facial animations to playing menu simulator. It's stuff that it's a Bethesda experience that has not aged well, and for some reason Bethesda just keeps on doubling down. Even with the criticism with Starfield's base game, which has a 60% on Steam, Bethesda isn't getting the message from players. And this article mentions that 343 Studios, which is now Halo Studios, abandoned its Slip Space engine for Unreal. That was announced just in the last week or two. Cyberpunk
Everyone is effectively abandoning things for Unreal now.
Developer CD Projekt Red has left its Red engine. Azabo Studio will no longer be using Zouna, and Helldivers 2 developer Arrowhead is likely shifting to Unreal. I don't think Unreal is just the universal answer to changing your game engine, but if there is an engine, Unreal probably makes the most sense, as it's the easiest to use, and most designers have experience within that. But Nesmith explains changing an engine would be a huge shift for Bethesda, and one that would take numerous years to properly implement. This would result in a period of slower development, a long training process, and of course a massive cost. Should they move?
Yeah, again, when Bethesda switches their engine, the first game that they make is gonna be a disaster. Now, does it honestly matter when everything they produce now is a disaster? Bethesda's portfolio of games in the last years are Fallout 76, Starfield, Redfall. And yes, Redfall is a Bethesda game. We know that Bethesda had full oversight of everything that was done with Redfall. And it is effectively a Bethesda product, even if it wasn't developed by that studio. Okay, let's see.
Todd Howard also did talk about the engine back in June of 2021. For those wondering if Bethesda would ditch Unreal Engine, well, this is Todd's answer at the time. He said the Creation Engine 2 will be Bethesda's gold standard going forward. So this was at the time Bethesda doubling down on their Gamebryo engine, which became the Creation Engine with upgrades, and now it's the Creation Engine 2, as we saw in Starfield. Bethesda studio director...
The Creation Engine 2's, by the way, greatest achievement is putting sandwiches like this and making a domino effect happen. And Bethesda fanboys were literally losing their shit over it. It was the most pathetic, disappointing thing I have seen in my life.
Director Todd Howard reaffirmed that the studio's Creation Engine 2 is being built for both games. It's worth emphasizing that it's being built, not that it was built. And he said at the time, it's like a new tech base, Howard explains. The vast majority of our development work is on Starfield right now, but everything works on everything, so the projects kind of intertwine. It's good to think of the Elder Scrolls 6, it's still being in a design phase, but we're checking the tech. Is this going to handle the things we want to do in that game? Every game will have some new suites of technology, so Elder Scrolls 6 will have some additions onto Creation Engine 2 that game is going to reacquire. So all things considered, definitely sounds like Creation Engine 2 is here to stay. It's not like Microsoft's going to be barging through the door telling Bethesda to finally get their act together, as they've been giving them autonomy, so this is what's going to happen. And this is where it gets rather interesting, because Bruce Nesmith went further talking about the expectations of the Elder Scrolls 6, pretty much saying that people are going to be disappointed. And in another recent interview, he said the Elder Scrolls 6 is
He's right. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind the Elder Scrolls 6 is gonna be disappointing.
Undoubtedly going to be an amazing
Best case scenario, we're gonna get a 5 out of 10 in Elder Scrolls 6 by not IGN standards.
game, but it's going to be compared to all the previous games that Bethesda made, just like every studio's games are going to be compared to the previous products. And he continues. He goes into more detail about matching these lofty expectations while noting how games that came after Skyrim, like Fallout 4, 76, and Starfield, also had these same problems, with the best approach for developers being to manage expectations, to try and set expectations for the people who buy games. You know, the 30-year-old who's making a piece of art, who's a professional artist, he can't control the expectation because he's got all this history, you know? It's there whether he likes it or not. And the same is true of the fans who want to buy Elder Scrolls 6. Their expectations are going to be almost impossible to meet, which I just don't like this response at all. We've seen other developers meet the
I don't even honestly get that response at all.
expectations. I think a great example is Rockstar Games with Red Dead Redemption 2. I think entering into that game, a lot of people had the expectation they're not going to be able to match John Marston's experience and New Austin and Nuevo Paraíso, but they did that with Arthur Morgan, and the entire game is an evolution of a game that had come 10 or so years before. I think it was actually 8 years. And Red Dead Redemption exceeded expectations, in my opinion. Obviously, not everybody feels that way, but it is considered for many people a game of the generation, and Rockstar showed that they are one of the few studios that can match those expectations. They can exceed them. They're the reason why people are excited for Grand Theft Auto 6. And that feeling, that sentiment, was the way a lot of people felt about Bethesda back around 2010, 2011 with Skyrim. They were a company that could do no bad. And that was felt until obviously Fallout 76 came about, and we've just been continuing this downward spiral with this company since then. Now, Nesmith goes on to admit how marketing departments just put their head in their hands and just weep in these sort of situations, because then if it isn't perfect, if it just doesn't get a 95 plus on Metacritic, a product can then be met with extreme criticism and deemed a failure. And that will be the case with the Elder Scrolls 6. This is a game that people will be waiting for about 16, 17 years. And if the game is just mediocre, you're going to hear a lot of criticism for Todd Howard and Bethesda. And
by the way, some people are going to say, oh, because everyone's expecting a miracle, it's not possible to deliver. I'm sorry, but GTA 5 existed. And everyone loved it, okay? GTA 5 was loved all around. It was great. The story was great. Everything was great. The multiplayer element at the start was shit. But, you know, at least was something. But, you know, you get the point, don't you? If you make something good enough, the expectancies can be met. When GTA 6 releases, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a great game. I am very sure it's going to be a great game, in fact. Oh, yeah. But imagine, by the way, GTA 6 fails, which please don't happen. It would be the funniest thing because that shit cost $1 billion to make. It would be funny, but it's going to succeed. There's no way it fails. GTA 6 is going to succeed, okay? There's no way. It is what it is. But yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much it. That's our boy, Legendary Killer HD. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.